Hi, my name is Kimberly, and today I am going to be talking about neuroanatomy and neurophysiology, how they are involved in speech, language, and hearing. So, as a future clinician, I've learned that sorry that my dog is barking. I've learned that communication is much more than just talking and listening, which is actually really interesting. I reading and after this assignment while typing my script, I noticed how, well, also with the class, anyway, sorry, I realized how it depends on many of the parts of the nervous system and how they all come together and work as one. So in this presentation, I'm going to go over some of the major brain structures, how the nervous system sends messages, and why all of this matters in speech and hearing. So I'll start with some of the basic parts about the brain. The brain is made up of gray matter and white matter. Gray matter contains neuron cell bodies, and that is where a lot of our thinking and processing happens. White matter, on the other hand, it's made of axons. I think I'm pronouncing that correct. Axons covered in, I couldn't pronounce this word when I was typing it. It was like myelin, Myelin. And anyway, so I think that this part of the brain is really important for communication because it helps different parts of the brain to send messages to each other, like obviously from the brain to like my hands. Like people, when they talk, they use gestures. As you've been watching me in this video, I've been using gestures. I do move my hands a lot, sorry. I also want to explain tracts and nerves. Tracts are like bundles of nerve fibers. They are inside the brain and the spinal cord. Nerves are outside the brain and spinal cord, and they connect to the nervous system. Another thing that I want to talk about is the afferent and efferent neurons. They are the efferent neurons are what brings sensory information to our brains, and like hearing, sounds, and efferent neurons send messages from the brain to our muscles, like our muscles that we use to speak. And both are very important, and they are important for communication, of course, because they are what sorry, they are what get information and send information back out. Then I also want to add on more from the nervous system: neurons and glial cells. Neurons send messages, while glial cells are the ones that actually support neurons. They protect and nourish the neurons to help everything run smoothly. Next, I want to talk about lateralized function. Lateralized function, it just means that there are more jobs connected to one side of the brain than others. Sorry. In most people, the left hemisphere handles all, I wouldn't say most, I think all of us. Our left hemispheres, they handle language. And it's not just about language, but it also handles tasks like grammar and being able to find words when we're trying to talk with others, or you know, write to others. Anyway, the right hemisphere, it helps more with emotions, tone, and our voice and social communication. Both sides are also really important for communication because they combine together and they function as one for us to be able to understand and conversate with other people. I also want to talk about the cranial nerves, and I want to say that after I knew that they were important for our bodies, but after typing the script and looking through for information and everything, I realized how important they really are for our communication. And I'm gonna start with the facial nerve. The facial nerve is a cranial nerve, and it's actually cranial nerve number 7. And it helps to control our facial muscles. And then this one's kind of hard to pronounce, but the vestibulocochlear nerve, and I like that one because it helps with our hearing. And I know some people who, I mean, even me before, I really didn't put hearing much into thought and how it is important for us for communication. But anyway, the next nerve is the vagus. I think that's how you pronounce it. vagus nerve, and that it's cranial nerve number 10, and it helps with voice and resonance. I think I have one more nerve. The other nerve is the hypoglossal no nerve. I think it is cranial number 12, if I'm not mistaken, and it controls our tongue. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. All of these are really important for not just speech, hearing, but also for swallowing. Then, after the cranial nerves, I think that the following is also really important, and that is the spinal cord. So, the spinal cord is important too because it carries messages, messages that we need to, have here, and messages that go from here, from our brain to our body. That's including signals involved in breathing, because without breathing, we cannot have speech. Now, another thing that I want to mention and that I cannot forget to mention because it's actually really important is blood supply to the brain. The brain needs oxygen and nutrients, obviously. So the circle of Willis is a group of arteries that helps to keep the blood flowing through the brain. And then we have the middle cerebral artery, or also known as the MCA. Sorry, I have allergies. It is really important because it supplies areas involved in language. If there were to be a damage to the MCA, that could cause communication problems. And I think most of the times, well, I don't think, but from what I've read, most of the times when that is damaged, it can cause aphasia, and I think that's it, aphasia, because of a stroke. I think now it's time for me to talk about the hemispheres of the brain, the left and the right hemisphere. So the left hemisphere is usually dominant for language and speech, and the right hemisphere helps with emotional meaning and porosity. So I think that they're both really important for communication because they help us to communicate with others and show our feelings and, show our emotions. The next thing that I want to talk about, and it's actually one of my favorites, it was one of my favorites to type about on the script. Anyway, it's the brain lobes. So this is what I created, and long story short, I had to do this really quick because we are currently moving to Texas, and I packed my other project. It it was a model. I packed it and with all my materials, and I'm so mad at myself for it, but thankfully I had some extra materials, and this is what I created. But here are the lobes. So we have the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the occipital lobe, the cerebellum, the brainstem, the temporal lobe. So actually, I haven't mentioned it yet, but later on when I get to it, this is where the Broca's and Wernicke's area are located at in the brain, which are really important for communication as well. Actually, I'll just mention it now. They are really important because they help with comprehension. So Wernicke's area is the one that helps with comprehending, and Broca's area is important because it helps with our expressive language. And anyway, the frontal lobes, they help with motor planning and speech production. The temporal lobe, that one is the one that helps with hearing and understanding language, which again includes the work next area, which is why we are able to comprehend language. And then we have the parietal lobe. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know why I can't talk. I think I'm just really nervous. The parietal lobe, and it helps process sensory information, which is also really important for us, right? And then the occipital lobe, which is the one that helps us with our vision. And the cerebellum, the cerebellum, it helps with coordination, timing, and how it just helps us to have smooth moments. And for speech, that means that it helps with fluent articulation. The brainstem, on the other hand, it is also really important. It just has a little bit of a different, role. It controls things like breathing, which is really important because if we don't breathe, we cannot talk. With swallowing, I mean, if we couldn't swallow, we wouldn't be able to eat, right? And if we can't eat, then that's another problem. So pretty much the cerebellum is not the cerebellum, the brainstem. The brainstem is important to control breathing and swallowing, and also carries messages through the nervous system. So again, the brainstem carries messages, controls breathing and swallowing. Meninges. The meninges and the ventricles. They are actually both layers, protective layers, we could say. And the meninges, they are layers that cover and protect the brain and spinal cord. So it's a tissue that goes around your brain, of course, to protect the brain. And then the ventricles, they that is it sounds kind of weird, but after mentioning what it does, it kind of makes sense. So the ventricles, it's cerebro. What was it? It's a fluid. It's a fluid which cushions your brain, and it helps you to maintain your brain healthy. And honestly, all of this is really important for us, for our swallowing, communication. Everything is really important. And let me tell you why. Because if any of these parts are damaged, like the brainstem, if they were to be damaged, then we wouldn't be able to speak, swallow, you know? And it would actually affect our breathing too, because of course it controls the breathing. And then if our cerebellum, if it was damaged, same thing, it would lead to coordination problems in speech. And then the cranial nerves, if there's any damage to the cranial nerves, it can affect articulation, voice, and resonance. this is really important for us to understand about neuroanatomy, how it matters so much, and how speech language pathology is really important for every single person. Even though we may not put much thought into it, it really is important. So, to wrap up this video, I think that speech, language, and hearing depend on many systems, and all those systems, of course, work together again into one. And I say that's this, our brain, and like, let's see, I don't know if I'm missing anything else, but all these structures like the gray matter, white matter, neurons, cranial nerves, the cerebellums, the frontal, all the lobes, everything, the arteries, they are really important, and they all have important roles that help us to communicate. And I know I feel like I've repeated that a lot, but I'm sorry. I am really nervous and it is late. So I think that's it. I think I covered everything in this video, and thank you for watching. I'm sorry I do get distracted a lot and I do talk a lot, but I hope that everything in the video makes sense, and thank you for watching again. This is my little project that I made, but yes, thank you for watching.